Yo, the Kids official sliding on the instrumental. Nordic combos, twist your mental like forbidden.
Peace to the public and power to the people. What up, world? Y'all look good. Everywhere y'all at, I just want y'all to know y'all look good right now. This is the space where the vulnerable are powerful. And where the most gangster thing you could do is serve. We all the way live.
Absolutely welcome everybody to this show that someone, bro, you know, Miles, someone out there right now has an idea of the type of person that they want to become. And there is a whole the footprint to become that person might not be as clear or as obvious as maybe some other alternative and traditional options. And maybe it's coming from friends, and maybe it's coming from family, and maybe it's coming even from the internal monologue of actually, can I be this person that I want to become? And we're here to let you know that you definitely can be. You definitely can be. And this is this place where we celebrate that, man. This is a place of carefully curated content for your cranium, the All the Way Live show. We do the show for a host of reasons, but no reason more than the fact that we know people are going through it. We know that depression is at an all-time high. We know that loneliness is at an all-time high. We know that just getting by from day to day sometimes is very difficult. So we curate this carefully curated content, man, to be able to give you some energy to go through your week, and also, you know, get some information that you can maybe sound smart around your friends with. You feel me?
Oh, I feel you, bro. You spoke to me. Pastor was talking to me, y'all, with the beginning of this session. And I just appreciate you grounding us, bringing us in, making people feel seen. And we speak to y'all from the UK. The UK is definitely in the building. Shout out to our boy Hassan on the boards, holding it down, keeping the show looking immaculate. Shout out to you.
Do this without you.
Yes, sir. And shout out to you, Zoe, man, holding it down for SA. SA is definitely in the building. You know what I'm saying? And an inexorable part of the show. You know what I mean? This is the vibe that you bring, and the vibe that, you know, you keeping me warm. I feel the warmth coming off you because it's cold over here in Chicago. Chicago is definitely also in the building. And as always, this podcast is recorded on stolen land. This land was cared for by the Council of the Three Fires, the Potawatomi people, and the violence done to remove those First Nations people is inseparable from the violence that we see in this country today, this city today, in this world today. And for that reason, we lift up history on the show to figure out how we can make a path forward. We lift up love for First Nations people the world over, for Indigenous people the world over, and we lift up love between Black and Brown people the world over. We need solidarity more than ever the world over right now. That's also how you know that the intro is over. Let's get into the show.
Yeah, I get that, but is we live though? Is we like all the way live though? You heard?
What we say all the time is that this is a place where impact meets art. My brother Miles Xavier is a community organizer and an impact-focused person. I myself am an activist. And what we do, man, is we like to share a lot of the work that we've been doing throughout the week, checking in. Brother, talk to me. How are you doing? How are you feeling? What you been up to?
I've been running around, man, which isn't unusual. But hopefully that labor is fruitful. But also it's a good time sometimes. I'm fortunate enough that a lot of times my work is a lot of fun. I got to go see a play last night, The Ripple, The Wave, that carried me home. Here go to Play Build, hand bill for that. It was a fire play, man. It was about the desegregation of swimming pools in Kansas in the 1960s in the United States. And about the people that made that happen, a very human story, about how difficult it can be to be passionate about a cause and also try and balance a healthy lifestyle at home and for your family. But it was a beautiful story. We've gone way too long in this show without mentioning that it is indeed Black History Month. So as a part of that, it was really cool to be able to see that kind of play on theme for that content. And so I'm going to be speaking at a panel. Ooh, Ooh, our boy Hassan. Look at that. Yes, yes, yes.
Pulling
The
it up.
lovely ladies that were a part of that show. Shout out the YouTube audience that can see this right now. Yes, so it was an amazing show, and I actually have the privilege to be speaking at a panel post their show this afternoon. So just been preparing for that over the last couple of days, getting back into the rhythm of work after the holidays, and King Day, which was a huge success. Shout out to everybody that participated in King Day. But yeah, man, that's what we got going on. What about you?
Nice.
What's up with you, broski?
Hey, a lot of work on my side, brother. Things have been going very well. I had the absolute privilege this week of being able to um, deliver some food to the Door of Hope Foundation. So this week, actually, we wanted to try something different with the Mandula Foundation, and we wanted to do some content. We're really trying to get our content up and really trying to share a lot of the work that we're doing. And one of the ways that we wanted to do that is to do a whole thing where we get food that gets donated to us, pick a random number on Google, and record the whole process, and just type in orphanages near me, find the closest one, call them, let them know we're bringing in food, and then just deliver it. And it's a type of series that we want to keep going for a little bit. And the whole reason why we want to be able to do that is to show people, like, impact doesn't always have to be, for instance, Miles Xavier level of work, where you're organizing protests and you're speaking at plays and whatnot. That is extremely commendable, but like we always say, there's no minimum entry for impact. And for us, it is sometimes as simple as like picking up a phone, calling an orphanage, and going there. Something that we do very often, and that we do as a foundation in Chicago and in SA. We literally get food, call whoever we think might need it, and take it there. So we had the privilege of doing that this week. Bro, I need to tell you, right, at the Door of Hope, it was, and we've spoken about this before, but it was just so, sometimes you get moments where you're just floored about what you're seeing. And at this foundation, at this orphanage in Hillbrow, which is a very rough part of Johannesburg, there is a metal box in the wall, right? So on the other side of the wall is the street, and then on the other side of that is the orphanage. And it's a metal box, and it's a baby box, like they call it, right? And what you see is that they pull on the other side, people who want to leave their kids will leave their kids in a baby box like this. Now, it really is just a pauseful moment when you just see this box, right? And one of the things that it told me is that, like, sometimes hope doesn't look as beautiful as we might think it is. Sometimes hope is just a box in the wall, man. So it was an absolute pleasure for us to be able to deliver food to this place. An incredible experience, something that we're going to definitely keep doing. This is, it was one of those moments.
Man, that's deep. That's deep. Looking at that, I see, I think my first thought is to, like, the situation someone must feel like they're in, to leave their child in that box, and what failures in safety nets, in just resources, you know what I mean, put somebody in that situation where they feel like they can't care for that child, right? Or find, anywhere else, a loved one, a part of their village, right? A part of their community to care for that child. Don't have a relationship to hand that responsibility off any other way. It tells me we got a lot of work to do, bro. So thank you for being present in that moment, to realize that it's something really teachable to bring here and powerful to bring here. Thank you for the work that you're doing around that. And shout out to Door of Hope. That's beautiful.
Thank you, sir, man. And we're going to keep pushing that work. We really are going to keep pushing that work. Speaking of work and speaking of impact, who are we highlighting this week on our Impact Spotlight?
Yes. As I mentioned, it's Black History Month. We really need some air horns for that. You know what I'm saying? Clap it up for that. And so, yeah, there you go.
I'm wearing black the whole month.
That
in
is
solidarity.
That's quite.
It isn't really, because my whole wardrobe is black already. So I'm actually just gonna be doing what I always do, but this time with intention.
Yeah, you have been going with some darker tones lately. I have noticed that. You got some, because you got some creams, you got some green in your wardrobe, but it's been fading to black. It's been fading to black.
we militant this year. And actually, you know what it really comes from? I was reading this. I was reading a book. I was reading. I think it's flow state, right? And they just speak about some of the best places for creatives to get into a flow state. And one of those things is limiting the amount of options that you put into your daily work that are not with your art or that are not to put you in that flow state. So it's like Steve Jobs always wore the same thing. And like, you know, once you limit the number of decisions you have to make so that the most decisions you're making are the ones that are in your flow state. So black all year.
Wow. It's really funny like that you mentioned that. I actually do remember reading something like a few years back about a dude that streamlined his day by always wearing the same color on a certain day of the week for that very reason, so that you wouldn't have to think about, you know what I'm saying, what am I going to wear? It's where's my blue shirt at? My blue shirt clean? Cool. I'm out here with it. Dang. All right, cool.
Yeah. What are you wasting your time making decisions about, brother?
Yo, man, I keep thinking the light parts of the show is gonna be light, but you have a way of bringing a certain gravitas to every subject we talk about, man. Try and bring. All right, here's a challenge for you. The next subject is related to toys. How about that? Did you have toys as a kid?
You see, I did have a lot of toys as a kid. I'm not even gonna lie to you. You know, I was very blessed. I was very, very blessed in that way.
What were some of your favorite toys as a kid?
I'm a PlayStation kid, but there was this. You see these new cars that these kids have now, these very expensive SUVs. Have you actually seen how much kid toys are right now?
You talking about the little kid rolling SUVs? Or
Those rolling SUVs are down payments for a real car.
Yeah, man. I always they had those even when I was a kid. They had the you could get the little Hummer, right? They had the Barbie joint for the girls, but then if your parents was like real chill, they'd get you the little mini bike. You remember those?
I didn't get the mini bike.
No, I didn't get the mini bike either, for sure. But you remember that, like the little baby size like motorcycle. But no, I didn't have. I had my one of my favorite toys as a kid. I had a black Power Ranger, just with like all the joints though. He even had wrist joints. He had elbow joints. You could really like pose them. That was one of my favorite joints as a kid. But also, I had a Super Soaker. Did you ever have a Super Soaker?
I did indeed have a Super Soaker.
Super Soakers, for anybody who doesn't know, were these pump action activated water guns, right? Did you know that the Super Soaker was invented by a black man?
I do believe this. I do think I knew this actually. And for Black History Month, we're gonna let you know of the things that black people did that you might not have known about. This is Mr. Soaker. Is his name actually? That's actually terrible. Let me cut that. Can we edit that out?
My man Lonnie Johnson is actually an incredible person. Lonnie Johnson has a master's degree in nuclear engineering. He was a U.S. Air Force engineer who worked on B-2 stealth bombers.
Hold on, dog.
No
Hold on. Listen, dude, I think this is an incredible story, but I can't get the image of what the documentary would actually look like. This man struggling to get this idea of a pump action water gun greenlit by executives. That documentary would be hilarious.
Yeah, it would be a cross between that Atlanta episode and The Pursuit of Happiness.
For sure. For sure. And it would be played by Michael B. Jordan, probably.
Oh, that's a compliment, though. I don't know if Lonnie would be mad at that. I think if Michael B. Jordan playing you in the biopic, you did something right.
Is it okay if Michael B. Jordan plays me in a biopic, even though he's older than me?
Yes, I think. I don't know. We're getting off track.
That's not what Black History Month is about. It's about celebrating this man.
I'll ask. I don't know. I'll find somebody to ask about that. If you know anything about whether that is a possibility for Zoe, drop that in the chat. But this brother, Lonnie Johnson, right? I wasn't even done listing my guy's accolades, right? So he's the inventor of the Super Soaker. He's a nuclear engineer, literally a rocket scientist. He worked on B-2 stealth bombers. He also invented the Nerf and Strike dart gun. This dude's resume are all over the place.
I'm gonna keep it together.
Between like fun and like And like this is very serious scientific stuff. Inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame for all of his accomplishments. And we're gonna tell you a little bit about what he's working on now. But yeah, man, he assembled the Super Soaker prototype out of an empty soda bottle, PVC pipe, O-rings, and nylon tubing. So he MacGyvered the first Super Soaker, and then it took over 10 years, but eventually it was brought to market and became the billion-dollar toy that it is today. Shout out to Hassan for pulling up the joints, the picture of the one of the original models of the Super Soaker, which actually looks fire. This would be like a dope Black History Month craft. If you got a like after school program, your kids will go crazy to learn about Lonnie Johnson and make a prototype Super Soaker. That's the best class day ever. Unfortunately, it's in February, so that's a danger. You don't want to spray with a water gun in February, but dope.
Look, I have a black mom, right? And if I was a rocket scientist and I came up and I brought an idea of a Super Soaker as a rocket scientist with the engineering degree and tell my black mom that that's what I wanted to sell, and it takes 10 years to make that happen, I can only imagine the type of pushback this man must have had. So as part of what we celebrate him for, I'm sure if he's listening to this right now, he would want us to acknowledge how difficult it was for him to be able to get this greenlit and turn it into $1 billion idea.
Zoe, are you using Lonnie as a shield right now? Zoe's like, yo, if you go alternate route, mom, all right. You know, they're not gonna believe the idea might look like a Super Soaker at first, you know, a toy, something to play with, but you know what I'm saying? Eventually, that's all the more serious endeavors. We're gonna get there. Give me time.
Hey, I'm gonna use my platform how I use it. You use your platform how you use it. Mom, if you're listening, my Super Soaker about to take off, I promise.
Yo, moving right along.
Let's go.
This guy goes from, shout out to Hassan again for laying down the headline, right? Because the Super Soaker, the incredible toy, brought joy to millions of kids, me and Zoe included. But my man moves from that to tackling climate change through sustainable sources of energy. And he says that climate change itself has been his primary motivator to be doing this type of work. So now he's moved into a space where he's creating an energy converter that converts heat into electricity in a solid state, which means there's no moving parts to this invention. It's basically something that you leave in an environment. And the really cool thing about this and the thing that makes it so efficient is that it's able to convert heat that's between 100 and 200 degrees Fahrenheit, which is hot, but it's not super crazy scientific special environment hot, right? There are actually a lot of abandoned oil wells that rest at that within that temperature range. So the idea is you can drop this device into those abandoned oil wells and anywhere else that's between 100 and 200 degrees. And this thing, without any moving parts, will convert that heat into electricity, right? So as a sustainable source of energy. So this man is on this like, incredible. This is, yeah, it's crazy. I mean, as an energy aficionado, our local energy expert, I mean, react. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's look, I'm in the country right now where there's load shedding, and then for anybody in South Africa or around South Africa right now, we're all consecutively going through a period where the lights can be taken from us at any point. You know, it's actually quite debilitating when it comes to work, and it's expensive on the economy, and it's expensive on students who need to study. It's a lot. So I, for one, endorse all sorts of energies being invested into. We've bigged up a lot of companies that, in part of our impact spotlight, that have done the same thing. We've highlighted so many different people that do the same thing too. You know, we had an interview with Cornel, who spoke about the work that they're doing. So it's 100%. I think the future for us lies in I don't think getting rid of fossil fuels is the full answer, but I definitely do think that a larger focus on alternatives is, and that's what this man is doing. Then we definitely salute him. And Miles, it actually makes me think like the power of what happens when you're part of a good schooling system, which we know that this brother was able to go through. And that's like a perfect segue into what we've seen happen in Chicago. coming into our next topic.
Take us there. I'm gonna open this topic the same way I opened the last topic. Zoe, you went to school, right?
I did go to school.
Did you enjoy like you had a different experience than most, man? I know you moved around from like Germany and Venezuela, and you know, where boarding school was a big part of that process. But did you enjoy that school experience? Did you feel connected to any of those schools?
I did, man. I was very fortunate to go to very good schools, which is why, you know, a lot of the work that we do when it comes to impact is so focused on education, because I for one is someone that fully appreciates the value of a good education, man. But this week you brought to us a story, you know, a very interesting story. You know, sometimes we do the show and there's a lot of things that we talk about, and then sometimes we get topics where I'm genuinely just like, man, I actually can't wait to hear what my brother Miles thinks about this story.
Yeah. Well, I actually appreciate you. I think we kind of stumbled upon this story by we were talking about how we want to do a better job of incorporating things that are going on in our community and representing, you know, the communities that we move around in some of the stories. And I think that local focus can be powerful. It can be actionable for people. And so we're actually in the midst of something that ties together a lot of issues that in Chicago are often overlooked as a part of a history, but I think really clarify why the situation in Chicago has so much violence, has so many people leaving Chicago. They're building a new school, right? Which in a lot of cases I feel like doesn't sound like a big deal. But context matters. So they're building a new school on the northernmost part of the South Side. It's temporarily being called the Near South High School. And it's got funding from Chicago Public Schools. And there was some state funding promised, and it's roughly going to cost about $150 million that they've come up with for this new school.
The school is going to cost $150 million.
Yeah, 150 M's for a new school, man. It's going to be a nice school, right?
Man, I know universities that haven't splurged that much.
Man, so that's great, right? And it's going to, again, the northernmost part of the South Side is very close to the Chinatown area of Chicago. It's kind of where this area that is predominantly East Asian and like it's growing. It's actually pretty diverse. There's a decent Hispanic population there. Some, you know, kind of affluent white people around there. And then it's where the South Side is predominantly black. So as the northernmost part of that, you start to get into Bronzeville, the area that I do a lot of work in, and, you know, where it gets blackety black in the South Side, like 96% black in some of the schools, a little bit further south, right? Where they're planning to build a school in this kind of borderish area. Chicago's a very segregated city. It's been like that for a long time. In this very borderish.
Let's not just skip over that point.
Yeah, you're right.
The segregation in Chicago is, I think, a large part of the controversy that's built into the building of the school. Chicago has gone through decades of redlining, which is literal systematic policies that have been put into place in order to make it more difficult for people who are in lower income households to have access to banking infrastructure. We covered even bridges. They were building bridges lower in impoverished areas so that trucks that carry goods and that motivate commerce weren't allowed to be able to go in. So it's literally been a very, very systematic process to ensure that the low income households of Chicago stay in the low income side, and that segregation is big. Just wanted to give a bit of that context.
No doubt. Yeah, appreciate that, man. So the other thing that's actually deeply connected to that is Chicago is the site of two historical closings, right? The first is the largest ever closing of public schools, which was mostly concentrated on the South Side. They closed over 40 schools, which as you can imagine, is disruptive to a neighborhood and to a community and to the educational process there. It's also the site, still talking about the South Side in a big way, of the largest ever closure of public housing, right? Thousands of families lived in these large project buildings. They tore down the project buildings. They said they were going to replace them with other affordable housing. That never came through. And actually, the site where they're planning to build this new school is on the former site of one of those housing projects that was torn down, that housed hundreds of families. And they've planned and promised that that land would be used for affordable housing, and that families that were displaced by that closure of housing would have first dibs on that housing. But now they're building a school, and they said they're going to build the housing close by. But that all makes for, that's where kind of the controversy could be said to start, right?
Something that you've challenged me to do on this show is just to be very direct about how we feel about things as we see them, right? And as someone that's seen what the segregation levels of Chicago is like, and then hearing about a new school that's being built, even though schools in predominantly low-income households have shut down, like you said, 40, 50 schools have been shut down up until 2017. By 1750 schools have been 50 schools have been shut down. It is a bit infuriating, right? And once you get even deeper into the figures, and you realize that actually Chicago is one of those unique cities where there's almost a equal split of Black, Latino, and white people within a city. So unlike a lot of cosmopolitan cities in the US, which might have an overwhelming majority of white people, Chicago doesn't necessarily have that. But when you look even deeper into the Chicago schooling system, something that you see is that a large percentage of the students who are in Chicago's public schooling systems are people from low income households. So about 86% of people who are actually working, who are actually going to school in Chicago, are from low income households. I didn't know that, right? And so as somebody who's just like, as someone who finds Chicago to be second home, one of the things that was a bit confusing for me to fully understand is that you have the CPS, which is the Chicago Public School System, and they say we're going to shut down 50 schools. And they say they shut down those schools because enrollment has gone down. But then at the same time, we see things like in 2016, there was $7 million for a new school. 2017, $300 million for a school production. In 2018, there was another plan to be able to build a school for. They borrowed $84 million to be able to build a school. So it's a bit, it's a bit difficult for me to understand. How is this CPS, the same ones that's shutting schools down, able to raise close to $500 million over the last 8 years in order to be able to build schools of the kids who go into the school cannot reach?
There you go. And I love that you started that with, let me just tell you how this directly makes me feel, because that has been the response largely from the community is, hey, I know school that could use $1 million, $2 million, right? The school that my kids go to could use $5 million. So where did this $150 million come from to build a new school? Making that problem even more complex is schools are funded based on their performance, based on property tax and value of the area around them, but are also shut down when they're underutilized, right? Putting this new school in this near south area of Chicago will pull families from two other primarily Black high schools, kind of three other, Dunbar High School, Phillips High School, and DuSable High School. So as it pulls families from those already underutilized schools, those schools are more likely to be shut down, right? Because they closed 40 schools, they were like, all right. Now that we closed those 40, we're going to put a moratorium on closing schools. No more schools will be closed until 2025. This proposed new school is projected to be completed, guess when?
2025?
Boom. There you go. right? So the fear is that as soon as that moratorium is lifted, this school goes up, pulls those families from those other schools that are already being underutilized, and those schools are then closed, right? So the community, your reaction is the community's reaction to say, where did this money come from to build this new school when our schools need funds? And if you build this new school and pull students away from our schools are going to be closed, and some of our families are going to be able to attend that school, but it's also mostly serving this Chinatown area, this other affluent white area. We're going to be, get the worst end of this again, as we historically have.
That's the frustrating part of this whole thing, man. That's really that's where it really gets a bit frustrating, be able to fully comprehend the logic and the thinking behind some of the schooling, behind some of these decisions. So for me, as someone who's looking at it as almost an outsider looking in, that's what frustrates me about the systems in the US, where it's like there's a clear, even from a numbers and a percentage perspective, right? 86% of kids who utilize public schools in Chicago are from low-income households. So if a majority of children who are enrolled through the Chicago public school system are not even having resources be allocated towards those schools, then how do you expect the people of that community to be able to overcome? And it gets compounded when you realize that a lot of the reasons why these schools are not performing is because teachers are increasingly getting underpaid. The resources that are allocated for going into these low-income schools are often through corrupt ways pushed towards these middle-class income and more traditionally white areas of schooling. So much so that the former head of CPS in Chicago is currently spending 4.5 years in prison for corruption related to the CPS. So the whole infrastructure itself is actually broken. And it's one of those things where you look at a city and you go, how is it possible that you can take an institution and see an institution like the CPS and see that a majority of the children that need to get helped are having resources stripped away from them in the name of corruption and in the name to be able to appease a marginal group of who this thing is supposed to serve? It makes no sense to me, and something you like to ask me that I appreciate in fields that I might have a bit more expertise on is, how would you fix it? And this is your city, and you're somebody that gets active when you confront with situations like this. How would you fix it as Miles Xavier?
Yeah. So thank you for acknowledging kind of that frustration, and in just a really human way. I think I just want to say a little bit more about this, because it seems like, you could explain this one way and say, this is a new school and there is a demand for this new school. Especially folks in Chinatown have been saying that they want, right, this new school, a school that caters to their culture in a competent way. And that's a valid ask, right? For a long time, folks in that area have been unwilling to send their kids to schools in Bronzeville, primarily black schools. There's a school called Kelly College Prep, 5 miles away from Chinatown. That has kind of takes on the bulk of the students from Chinatown. And Phillips is 2 miles away, right? So I say all that to say that history of segregation in Chicago, that distance that's created by that separation, breeds fear and breeds misunderstanding. And so I think there's a community that is asking for its needs and its culture to be respected. And I think that that's important. But I think we need to continue to work in solidarity across the East Asian community and the Black community to say everyone's needs need to be met. Resources that are available and that come up, millions of dollars that CPS is able to generate, need to benefit all of those communities, right? And so personally, as somebody who's been in some of these meetings, that has been working with the community to organize a response around this, I have seen folks from that East Asian community come to sit at the table and say, we want our school, no doubt, but we want y'all to have resources too. We want your schools to have amenities too. And so I think that collaboration is a big part of the solution to this. I also think that that word right there, amenities, I think amenity matching is that's my solution to this, right? You got a $150 million school, or you got $150 million for a school, build a really nice school. But two things I would like in writing. One, I would like that the moratorium on closing schools is extended for all of those Black schools that might be affected by this new school. So put it in writing that Dunbar, Phillips, and DuSable will not close for the next 15 years after this new school is put there. And then also put in writing that each of those schools will have an equal amenity and every amenity that is available in the new school. So y'all want to build a swimming pool in that new school? All right, y'all about to build a swimming pool in Dunbar and Phillips and DuSable, right? Y'all want to put a brand new computer lab with big TVs, you know what I'm saying? Okay, cool. We need the same amount of TVs, the same amount of seats, the same amount of computers for Dunbar, Phillips, and DuSable. That's how I would approach solving.
I like that. And part of the research I found was that in the 50s, in the 50s, when the segregation movement was looking to be broken apart, a huge effort was made into integrating schools with each other. And part of that was done through the busing system, where they would move kids from low-income households to schools in middle and upper income households, and then vice versa. And in the 80s actually is the peak time when integration in schools was the highest in the US. Right now, the integration levels in schools is worse than it was in the 60s. So if there's any consolation on some of the things that have been done before that have helped to at least alleviate or increase the number of options that parents have, then that's cool. Because a really cool thing, actually, Miles, that you sent me to, there was a talk that was being organized in Chicago back in 2019 that we went to. And it was a forum where parents were just speaking about their experiences with schools. And you hear these harrowing stories of mothers who speak about having to make the decision of, okay, there's a school in my neighborhood and my child has to walk to that school. But on the way there, there's gang members, there is violence, there's a lot of danger towards that child. And then the busing system also is not necessarily fully dependable. So a mother now has to be faced with, do I let my child literally walk through the valley of death to get to a school? Or do I have to not take this child to do homeschooling for them? And a lot of parents now in Chicago, there's a huge boom in parents who are forced to homeschool their kids. And as much as homeschooling might seem, right, God bless her, but even she would tell you she'd be hard pressed to homeschool me because of how difficult it is and how much of a full-time job it is to be able to teach just one child. So that's the reality that Chicago parents are being faced with. I like your solution of amenities matching. Call out to all the activists who care about the schooling systems in the U.S. It is messed up. It is completely broken. Teachers underpaid. Schools are not being funded enough. Get active. The funds are there. It's just the push in order to be able to make it happen or not. That's why I appreciate you, man. You're somebody that sees the problems in your communities and does something to fix it.
Yeah, we working. But as of now, CPS has not put either of those two things that I mentioned in writing. They are hosting they've been hosting these community webinars, right? And in a webinar, Zoom, you can't speak to other people in the webinar. You can't really put comments in the chat for other people to see. That didn't go over well. So we're running it back. We're doing a more community-based meeting. That's February 16th. Hit us up on All the Way Live. Hit us up in the DMs. Message us on YouTube, wherever you're taking this in, and we will hook you up with the details to that if you're in the Chicago area and want to come out and support that. That's it, man. That's all I got on Stumbled Upon. Appreciate you going through that with me. bruh.
Yep.
It's everything.
Discrimination doesn't just
It's
stay at the schools. It's wide. It's wide.
It's everything.
It's all over the place. And look, and I hate making the show about race. I promise I hate making this show about race. Me and Miles do not sit in our writers' rooms with our producer and we think, hey guys, what are the racist topics we can find in today to be able to speak about? That's not how we go about it, you know? That's not at all how we go about it, but we keep getting pushed.
Yeah, the thing is, once you read a story, a piece of knowledge, information is processed by your brain, you can't pretend you don't know it anymore. You know what I'm saying? You got to know to be a hypocrite, baby. So there's a moment that happens when a brother reads that Black Americans are roughly 3 to 5 times more likely to face an IRS audit than other taxpayers. There's a moment in your brain. Okay. That seems important. And I think it's funny, like having these conversations with my brother Zway, right? Because there's a lot of times where topic comes up, and you know, my first instinct is to jump to it and go, "They at it again. They're doing it again." But I feel much better. You know, it's a much more warm introduction to the conversation when I know you two are looking at this like, "Yep, can't really deny it on this one." Black folks, 3 to 5 more times likely to be audited by the IRS than any other taxpayer. Why, Zway? Why, brother?
Why? Why does this keep happening? Why is this the case? It's actually quite infuriating, man. It's actually quite infuriating. And what I hate about situations like this is that you do.
That's what I was afraid of. We lost him. All right. Well, while my brother reconnects, let me give y'all the rundown, all the information that I know he knows, and then he'll be back, and then we can get into it. A Stanford, good college, great school. They collaborated with the Department of the Treasury. That is the government. They do have all the records. I would say that's pretty official. To find and in collaboration, they did a research project to understand the disparities in race that are a part of tax auditing, right? 3 to 5 times more likely, Black folks. They say that this is not due to individual auditors at the IRS being like individually racist on their own, you know, pulling the files of Black folks on purpose. They say it's on the algorithms, right? The algorithm is racist.
I was going to ask you if you got into the place where they deny any wrongdoing, blame it on the infrastructures that they have been tasked to be able to set up, and have effectively tried to deflect responsibility of something that they have instructed to do exactly what it does. Have we covered that point yet?
Right on time, my brother. Right on time.
There's a trend, dude. There's a trend. I'm seeing there's a trend here because we've covered this in so many different ways. And you look at it and you really do hope for redeeming quality. Part of your criticism to me is that I'm very slow to pull out the racist gun. You know, when things seem to be or are presented as racist, I'm usually the last person in the race to cross that border, more so wishing to be able to say something is ignorant and foolish before it is racist. But sometimes, man, we just get put in these corners where the only option is racist.
Yeah, they tried to cut the data a lot of different ways. They said, well, hey, maybe it's a class thing, right? Maybe it's more low income people. Nope, still mostly Black folks. Okay, wait. Some people that are low income qualify for tax credits, right? Maybe if you're checking off a whole bunch of credits, it's gonna get you more than somebody else. Nope, still Black people, right? Of all the people that get credits, still disproportionately targeting Black people. It wasn't until they shifted the algorithm to say prioritize people who are reporting tax credits and are more likely to receive an inflated and too much in their return because of all their tax credits, rather than prioritize that over people who are evading paying taxes, right? So who are keeping their money rather than people who don't have a lot of money and are filing it back to get more returns. That's the only way to produce the results, to have as many Black people than white people.
I know how that boardroom meeting went. I know how it went. They're like, okay, let's hear what's happening. They say, hey, so we've done the numbers. And shout out to RegLab. RegLab is actually the company that was doing the research on it, and they do some really, really cool work. I actually would love to look into them because they use machine learning in order to be able to observe things that unfairly put people, previously disenfranchised people, at the low receiving end of systems, right? So they just go through a lot of data to be able to see this. And this is off the back of President Joe Biden, who recently enforced the Equal Tax Act or something to that effect, where it was pushing for what people have been calling on for a long time, which is that the taxes are unfairly impacting people. So they look into these figures and they come into the boardroom. They say, listen, IRS, it looks like your systems are racist. They're like, yeah, sure. No, that can't be right, because individuals in the IRS do not see the race of the people who are who are being chosen to be audited. They're like, okay, that's okay. But nevertheless, it still is racist. They go, okay, how would you say it's racist? And then, like you said, Black people are 3 times more likely to get audited. It turns out, as part of in the face of budget cuts, they set the algorithms that almost automate the way that tax filings are checked and audits are selected, to specifically, like you said, look for people who might be filing for disabilities, or who might be filing for income credits. So mainly people of color. But it gets wonky, like you said, when they actually look proportionately at all races who file for these income credits. Still, Black people are more likely to get audited. And they say it's because it's more difficult to audit people who have things such as businesses, different properties, who have more than just simple filings of personal income on their tax reports. All to say, they're like, yeah, we're not going to look over there. That's way too complicated. How about we look this way? But we promise it's not racist. Except it is, IRS. Except it really is.
And it's like, this is really funny to me from the perspective of, like, yo, nobody likes the IRS, right? Like, everybody's kind of like, we got to pay taxes, you know what I'm saying? But nobody be more heated at the IRS than Republicans. Rich white people do not like the IRS. They don't want them in their business. They constantly lobby to say the IRS is foul. Get them out of here, right? They've argued against progressive taxes, right? Which are taxes that tax people who make more income at a higher rate because they got more money. And they say, no, let us keep our money. The IRS don't know what they're doing. If we keep it, we're going to spend it. It's going to generate the economy. Get the IRS out of here. And I expected, when the story came out that the IRS is racist, I say I expected, but I noticed that when the story came out that the IRS is racist, the Republicans weren't like, yeah, they were like, it was quiet.
It's one of those things that if somebody told you at a barbershop, it sounds like one of those crazy things where it's just like, Black people get audited more. It's like, whatever, dude, whatever. And then the results come out, you're like, oh, damn, it's actually spot on. It's not just a little bit, it's actually overwhelming. I got a solution for that IRS, and this is going to be a bit crazy. It's going to be a bit wild. So I'll try and dial it in. Maybe, perhaps, right? Budget cuts are what are forcing you to make these cuts. What if you audit people that are most likely to commit white collar crimes, and you set your algorithm towards looking at them
It's in the
Possibly.
name.
It's in the name. White collar crime. look that way, you know. It's just it's a laziness, man. And a lot of times, even if your intention, even if the base intention is not racist, you can have a lazy effort that the inability to consider people of color in itself can be an act of racism, and that's exactly what we're happening. That's exactly what we're seeing here.
Man, I think you nailed it. I think that ties into the reason why the GOP is so quiet. This is a perfect example, like you said, of like an institution that's made up of people who individually, right, may or may not be racist, but if even like assuming that they're not, the system is built against people of color specifically, not just poor people, right? Not just people in low-income neighborhoods, Black people specifically. And I think we're at a place where we're uncovering more and more evidence of of ways in which entire systems in places like America are against Black people, and where there's this big push to not acknowledge that because of what does that mean has to happen now, right? The IRS, everybody gets audited. Every American citizen gets audited. So what does it mean if we have to dismantle the IRS? We got to move on to recommend a review, but I want to tell you something that as I was looking through the story, it was another one of those like barbershop things that was like, bro, this can't be true, man. Do you know why the IRS was created?
To tax Black people.
The IRS was created to fund the Civil War.
Oh man. So
the Internal Revenue Bureau collecting income tax for the first time in the United States was because white people enslaved Black people, and then half of white people realized that that was wrong. And so in order to fund the fight against the other white people that didn't realize that that was wrong, they created the IRS, which years later now taxes Black people 3 to 4 times, audits Black people 3 to 5 times more than white people.
I hate when institutions force this show to become Hotep. I hate it. We don't want to be talking about this.
Dude, thank you. Because this is the statement I just said as it was coming out of my mouth was like, I am the Black kufi wearing. I just became him. This hat became a kufi, and it was like, don't make me do this. It's true though. I have to.
No, stop. Stop. Iris, stop.
Cut it out. Not on Black History Month, man. It's ridiculous.
No, we will not tolerate. Miles, can you organize a protest in front of the IRS office? As a matter of fact, I'm a protest. I'm no longer paying my taxes. Just playing. They'll get.
Yo, shout out Wesley Snipes. Wait, nah. You know what? I'm not even gonna shout out. Shout out Martha Stewart. Okay. Shout out Nicolas Cage. We're not shouting out.
Nigga. Now you just shout out people that got taxed.
Tax evasion. We always talk about Wesley, right? We always talk about Tony Braxton. Nah. Martha Stewart, Nicolas Cage. All right, get him out of here.
Say her name.
Mike from Jersey Shore.
This is what Mike from Jersey Shore.
These are facts, people. Recommend review. Let's get out of here.
Hold on. Go to record review, please. Hold on. Listen, we need to leave people with some information that they can utilize going forward. We need to give people that information. And part of that information, people of color, include your businesses in part of your taxing. Make sure you include all your homes. Try and start an LLC and include that. That's going to reduce your chances of being audited. Keep your file, keep your receipts, take pictures of them for big purchases that you're doing. And Miles, we cannot end this segment on free. Clear the name of Mike from Jersey Shore. Please don't do that.
No, nah. That's the new Wesley Snipes. Mike is the new Wes. Nice, calm.
Yep.
Feels like home. You know what I'm saying? Recommended a review. This week we on Lil Yachty. Let's start here. Um, who was Lil Yachty to you, my friend?
Lil Yachty, man, Lil Yachty came out very controversially back in 2013, 2014 when he came out with it wasn't Broccoli. Broccoli came out 2014, 2013. There was a very it was One Night. That was the song that made Lil Yachty really pop, was One Night. And from the time that Lil Yachty has come out, Lil Yachty almost took over the face. Hip hop always has one artist who is on the dartboard face, or is the poster child of new whack. Whether that is, and usually and traditionally what it's been, it's always been One Night Drop 2017. Damn, wow, that's crazy. So yeah, One Night Drop 2017.
I'm stuck on new whack.
That's
My man is
no, but this one no, this is what I'm saying though, right? And I don't think how hip hop does that is fair, because oftentimes it's because it's a new artist and it's a younger artist that comes in with a more um with a not as conventional sound, and then later gets labeled as new whack. We've seen it through Soldier Boy, we've seen it through Yachty, we've seen it through Lil Pump, we've seen it through a lot of people. And like, I'm not grouping him into that grouping. I'm not putting him into that group, but it is important to be able to appreciate where he is now as an artist, as from where he started as an artist and all the criticism that he had coming in.
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey. You mentioned some of the initial success he had off of like one or two songs, and for a long time, Yachty to me was an artist I was perfectly content to let other people tell me when he had one, right? Not seek it out myself. I think I listened to Yachty's first project, and that only confirmed. I was like, yep, other people will let me know when Yachty has one. And that's been perfectly fine up until this point. But this was the first time I think I've really heard a loud clamoring that he has one with an album. Our producer brought it to us, told us to check it out. Um, did you hear anything about this album before we dove into it?
I did. I actually I didn't. I didn't. I kind of went into it green. I was actually going to ask you, is that what you've been hearing people say about this album, that it's good?
I've heard a lot of people say that it's good. I've actually heard a lot of people say that they feel like this album is doing much better what Drake wanted to do with Honestly Nevermind. That it's a more successful departure into something more dancey and pop. I didn't really agree with all of that, but I definitely went into it hearing that people had liked it, and that he had done a really good job doing something very different.
Yes. So with let's start here. I think what the key takeaway from it is that it is very refreshing to be able to hear a a alternative an alternative a hip hop artist doing an alternative sound that strays very far from where traditional hip hop is at the moment. And I think you can only get there as an artist once you have a lot of confidence in your ability to be able to satisfy what has traditionally been your core market. And you see Yachty do this type of thing almost backhandedly for a long time. You know, I Took the Walk to Poland was a very, very simple song, but that had a lot of popular appeal. And you know, things come out often that Yachty has been writing for the City Girls, you know. So clearly this man is extremely talented. I think that at some point, in being so talented in a space that you have a lot of prowess in, whether it's known or unknown, you take a big step, right? And you go to this alternative route. I think this alternative step that Yachty took is not particularly it's refreshing from him, but it actually, if you look through where this inspiration comes from, a lot of art, it is the classic alternative sound that artists take. You've actually heard the intro, Black Seminole, sounds a lot actually like Blue, Blue by Jaden Smith. Even the sound of alternative and rock mixing together is very, very Jaden Smith-esque. Last we forget Igor, which was dropped by Tyler, the creator, a few years ago, which was an even more impressive sound from this. I don't think that you will find a lot of current hip hop albums that are as full in their put together sonically. But the most disappointing part of this album, the thing that I liked least about this album was Lil Yachty, but the rest of the album I enjoyed.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun listening to this album.
Interesting. Didn't expect that from you.
Yeah, man. I didn't. I was telling you before off mic that if somebody took any of these individual songs and was like, "Yo, check this out," I'd be like, "All right." But to throw on the album, I think there's a sense of direction. There's a sense of like, hey, this brother's having so much fun with whoever's in the studio, whoever's helping him pull this together. I wanted to take a look at the production credits to see how much he had to do on the production, because you're right. My favorite parts were Yachty's ad libs and the features and the production, the lush sound. It sounded trippy in a good way, right? In a happy way, in a positive way. Like you, some of my least favorite parts were when Yachty actually tried to get some bars off, or like was really trying to put in a verse. I was less impressed by that than I was impressed by somebody clearly having taken in a lot of different experiences and being brave as an artist who I don't think people look for full and complete albums, to say, we're going to go with this idea, this concept, this feeling, and put it out there as a piece of music. I don't know how much I'll return to it, but it definitely gave me a different appreciation for Yachty as an artist, who up until this point, I really saw as somebody who hits only when the environment is set up for him to not try and just be himself. And this felt like he was still being himself, but it felt like he was trying. And I don't know if he was trying for like Jimi Hendrix in some places, or if he was trying for like a more soulful, like funk sound, but it was a fun listen. And I had fun hearing him have fun with the sound.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I was busy listening to when I was going through this album is, did Yachty hear someone have this album? The first halfway through, it sounded like he was like, "Man, I really like that sound. Can I have that?" And they're like, "Yeah, for sure. Just put your ad libs on it." That's what it sounded like a lot of the first. But as it keeps going, you can actually tell that, one, he enjoys this alternative, more rock-ish, traditional punkish sound. Not just that, it's got a lot of the internet influence into it. It's got a lot of early Frank Ocean and The Weeknd influence into it. It's got a lot of Jaden Smith. It's got a lot of Kid Cudi influence into it. Very Kid Cudi heavy. Looking at albums like Cudi and the Rager, Scott Miscuddy versus the World. Those are all very much in that same line. So for me, it wasn't so much it wasn't the best step in this, because I think the highest version of this alternative sound from a rapper that we've heard, or just in general, was Tyler the Creator's Igor. So this to me is one where that was the target, and it kind of was watered down a bit. What it does show me is that this dude is incredibly talented, extremely talented, but definitely it almost sounds like the artist who I enjoyed to hear this from, even Steve Lacy influenced a bit. The least favorite parts for me were when Yachty was on the song, but the rest of the album actually sounded to me very. I enjoyed it. Standouts: Black Seminole. The intro is great. I dig a 7-minute intro. Ride was the audio from Yachty was very difficult to enjoy there, but it sounds a bit FKA Twigs-ish. Sounds like I've officially lost vision. You can tell we're built with big stadium in mind. Like this would probably bang at a stadium. So I think from this you can take a lot of things that increases live performance audio experience. But I think as a standalone work, it's going to be hard for us to look back, I think, at the end of the year and point this out as a standout as a standout project. I think, yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate you. I think you've given anybody who liked this album 17 different artists that you just recommended off of who this sounds like. So go check that out, from Twigs to Tyler, to even the internet and Sid. I definitely heard some Sid influence from that last album in here too. But yeah, man, this one, and with that said, I think this album looks better when you look at Yachty's discography than it will when you look back and compare it to the other music that's out around it. But yeah, so I don't know how much I'll return to this. If I had to give it a score out of 5, I'd give it a solid 3 out of 5. And I would ask you what else you listening to.
I'd also give it 3 out of 5. And before we get out of Yachty, I do want to commend Yachty incredibly for he really is ahead of the curve musically. You know, back when Yachty was busy dropping, there was a point in time where Yachty was very focused on Detroit rap, and he was like, Detroit rap is the future. Detroit rap is the future. Turn around and we look, I Swear Vezo, Sada Baby, Baldy James. Where else are we going into this? There's so much talent. 4-2 Doug. There's so, like, Detroit right now is actually producing some of my favorite works, and Yachty was very much on top of this. He did a completely Detroit focused album with the Detroit sound now that we all appreciate, you know. So the dude is tapped in. He's talented. I appreciate somebody trying. I could see this going cool in a live performance, but for the most part, I don't think it's something that I'll return to. 3 out of 5 is accurate.
Love that. Yeah, man. Like Blake said, if you like this, listen to Sid's last album. That was really good. Listen to Igor by Tyler. There's another artist that this reminded me of that I couldn't. Oh, there's some St. John vibes in this too. I think St. John is ready to start putting out music again. He dropped a single this past week. It was decent, but I like this. I like this fusion of rock and hip hop and alternative. As a uncle in hip hop, right? As not quite a dad, I ain't really to say I'm that old head, but looking at hip hop and saying, okay, this seems like the kids are having fun with this. Not necessarily my bag, but it looks like a good time, and I have no problem reviewing stuff like this. So more to come. Zoe, what vibes you lost in, man? I know you just dropped a playlist. What's on that?
Hey man, I'm listening to a whole lot of my own playlist. Uncle Jams's recent, your group chat's favorite, Loverboy, out of the Loverboy series. Nothing but that good R&B on there, man. Listening to some Tiana Major, listening to some Jesse Reyes still, Mash Beats, Vic Tony. Can I give a shout out, a specific shout out to somebody called Maglera Dope Boy, bro. Maglera Dope Boy. I think that's the hottest thing coming out of SA right now. Some of the hottest hip hop that I've seen come out visually, sound wise in a long time, man. That's something that's exciting me, definitely coming through. What about you, my guy?
I've been stuck in SoundCloud. A lot of SoundCloud artists, producers that are flipping songs are really impressing me right now. Forest Fire. Go just check out Forest Fire on SoundCloud. Dive into that. Beautiful sounds. Who else is out there? J.C, JAYDOTTCEE. Some fire flips coming out of there. I just been rinsing that type of music. On the hip hop tip, Boldy, that new Boldy. Boldy is my guy right now. Hope he's healing up, man. He was involved in that car accident, so hopefully he's doing better. But bumping that Boldy, man. Yeah. Let us know what y'all listening to in the comments. We do this because we love hip hop. We do this because we love art and information, and we do this because we know.
We know
y'all could be anywhere in the world right now, getting your information from anywhere in the world right now, thinking about anything in the world right now. But you choose to listen to us, to tune into us, to work through all the interesting and strange and frustrating and complicated topics that we talk about. If there's anything you heard on the show today that you want to add to, that you want to share with us, that you want to have us talk more about, like, comment, subscribe. Livehouse Productions. We want you to eat something delicious. We want you to hug somebody you love. We hope you enjoyed the celebration of blackness and celebration of how good it feels to be black. Don't it feel good, Zway?
My favorite thing in the world.
Have a good Black History Month, y'all. We'll catch you next week. Peace, water, we gone.
Yeah, I get that, but is we live though?